Hi there, my name's Evin Brannigan. I'm about to be a part of Prospect's show this morning. I'm going to be talking about psychological safety in the workplace and why it matters.
Now, welcome to yet another exciting episode of the Online Prosperity Show, where we dive into the journeys of inspiring individuals that have transformed not only their lives, but their businesses and those that are around them. I'm your host, Prosper Taruvinga, and today we have a guest whose story is as intriguing as it is enlightening. Now, Evin, how are you doing today?
Good morning, Prospect. I'm doing fantastic. Thank you very much. What about yourself?
Absolutely. I'm really excited about the journey we're about to jump into. I mean, your story starts from the vibrant world of hairdressing to now the insightful realm of human behavior consulting. You see, for people like us who have no hair, we wouldn't know exactly what it feels like to be around people like you. So hence, I've got you on an interview like this. I think that's the best way we could actually have had our paths across. So there you go there, Evin. And for those that are meeting Evin for the very first time, like I said, his journey starts off from the world of hairdressing, and now he is in the realm of human behavior consulting, and his journey is just a testament of resilience, curiosity, and the pursuit of understanding why we do what we do. And he's the founder of Evin Brannigan Consulting, and he is dedicated his career to helping organizations foster psychological safety and mental well-being in the workplace. Now, obviously, it might sound like, Evin left his scissors to go into maybe cutting bread with executives. No, his path was not that linear. I mean, obviously, starting off as a hairdresser, he actually opened his own salon in Sydney in 2007. And then the GFC forced him to let go of his staff, but he also kept the business afloat single-handedly. And then this period really sparked a deep interest in human behavior, which then led him to study psychotherapy and eventually transition into corporate consulting. Now, as we explore Evin's story, I want you to also look within yourself and reflect on your own experiences as the viewer. Have you ever faced maybe a career crossroads where you had to completely do a 180 on the types of jobs that you were actually qualified to do? First of all, in the comments, just let us know, how did you navigate it, and let us know how easy it was or how difficult it was for you to adjust to your new settings. All right. Now, you might be wondering, why should I be bothered or worried about listening to this show today? Because Evin's work matters. In today's fast-paced corporate world, mental health and psychological safety are the most important than ever. And especially these days where everybody's just been threatened by the advent of artificial intelligence, people really need to know that their future is secure and their roles or the work that they do matters. So Evin's work helps organizations understand and implement practices that actually support employee well-being, leading to more productive and harmonious workplaces. Now, Evin, I could go on and talk about things that I'm not even qualified to talk about, which literally defeats the whole purpose of having you on the show. Tell us a little bit about, your journey, first of all, into Australia, because this is not your home country to start off with.
Yeah, I was very fortunate. I came here in the year 2000, originally just doing a round of world trip with my then partner. And we were exploring. I mean, we'd never left Ireland. So we went off to Asia. We came to Australia, New Zealand, Fiji, and East Coast of America. But I've got relatives here in Australia, and they'd come to visit me at some point in Ireland. And I was always curious about the Australian laid-back way of being. So came over here originally just on a working holiday for a couple of months. And I think after 9 months, we finally left. It was just like, this is where, if I'm going to grow old and retire and have kids someday, this is the place I want to have it. It was just mesmerized by this country. So yes, I went back to Ireland and saved up enough money. My partner and I split, but I was like, this is where I want to be. So I came over here and called Australia home in February 2003.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for that. Now, the year 2000 presents a big distinction in human evolution. I think that's the time where people were being told, about the whole Y2K setup and things of that nature. And did you feel like you would not thrive in Ireland at that time based on what was happening in the world at that particular moment?
Great question. In fact, it was the other way around. Ireland was booming. Right. So when I was growing up, in the 80s and the 90s, you learned a foreign language because there just weren't jobs. There wasn't prospects in Ireland. Mm-hmm. So we learned German. My sister learned French because you were going to go overseas. And then the government ended up doing a tax break to get companies into Ireland in the early to mid 90s. And from there, Ireland just grew, and they set up down south. There's lots of medical device companies in Ireland. And from there, it just boomed. And just before we got to 2000, people, especially in IT, were coming back from New York and from London to Ireland, where all the jobs were, where all the money was. So when I decided to emigrate in 2003, I was on a very good wicket. I was earning plenty of money. I could have opened up my own business probably within about a year or so of leaving. I had enough clients, enough people to work with. But money wasn't a thing for me. It's about lifestyle. It's about quality of life. And to me, personally, you could give me all the money in the world, but money wouldn't bring me the happiness that I get here. I'm a very outdoorsy person. I love sunshine. I love taking my kids out. I've got 2 boys, 9 and 11, and it's like having 2 border collies. They just got to run and run and run and run. And I don't know what I'd do if I was still in Ireland. I'd be running around the house. But yes, it's the quality of life that we have here is just second to none. So yeah, it was an easy decision. Even though money was plentiful in Ireland, money has never been my key driver. It's about quality of life, and that's what I saw here.
Absolutely. You know why this question for me brings, obviously brings a lot of weight to what we're about to jump into, is because you'd already established your why. Some people would come to a place like this predicated on greener pastures, but this wasn't the case for you. You literally solely came here for the lifestyle. And when you rocked up, they didn't tell you that everything around you might look cute, but it's designed to kill you.
Yes, I was well aware of the drop bear scenario, which thankfully I've been here for 9 months doing the working holiday. So I'd learned all those nuances. And so now when I came back here, I was all set and ready. Although the first apartment I lived in, I did have a huntsman spider the size of my hand in the top corner for the first 5 days, which was fine because I was told they stay up there. You'll be right. Until day 6 when I woke up and it wasn't there. And I searched everywhere in that apartment for that thing. At least when it was up in the corner, I was safe. But yes, it's the creatures here. That's the thing. The bigger they are, they're usually all right. It's the smaller ones you got to look out for.
Absolutely. I mean, what's you coming into a country without a welcoming party? You know what I mean? You just can't rock up to a place. There has to be people that welcome you to the land. And in this case, they send a representative, which was
100%.
Enhancement. Now, what was your perception then? Pretty much, obviously, when you're traveling, the landscape looks different because everything is touristy and you're not necessarily staying, but now you're staying. And, what was your view of what Australia was like and, how it then unfolded for you?
Look, I think because I did spend, out of the 9 months that we were here, there would have been a good 5 months of that working here as well. So I got an idea as to what that work-life balance could actually be. We weren't the typical Irish backpackers. We were here to continue our career in hairdressing. And so it was very much, I wanted to know what it was like to live and work here. And one of the things that I loved, as simple as it sounds, was just being able to have people over on your balcony in the evening time, not having to rely on going to a bar or a pub, but just you could bring people over, you could have a barbecue, and it's outside. And again, for people who live here, it's just the norm. But in Ireland, like the weather we've been having here in Sydney for the last couple of weeks, and the whole eastern seaboard is awful, but this is an Irish summer. So for me, it was just like, just the simplicity of that alone, just, I don't know, it was right in my soul is where it filled. And that was part of what brought me back here. So I knew I could work here. I knew that when I'd come back here to work, that it wasn't going to be a contrast to just being on a working holiday. It was very much work as well. So I knew what I was getting myself in for. To a certain degree, I knew what I was getting myself in for.
Absolutely. I mean, obviously, that whole lifestyle bell just keeps ringing in what it is that was, drawing you towards Australia. So 2003 to 2007, obviously, those were the times where you're now settled in. Just give us a bit of a highlight of what those sort of years were like just before the GFC.
Oh, okay, this could take up the rest of the interview. I'll try and narrow it down. So just give me the nod to shut up. I had a role managing a salon in Bondi, which was great. I got in and worked with this chap for 4 years. During the 4 years that I was there, a couple of things. One, I'd never experienced loneliness not like it, because although I got to meet different people through my relatives who are all similar age, and I was only 26, 27, so it's right in the heart of getting to know people. I found Sydney could be very cliquey and be very hard to make connections. And in hairdressing, because I just started with this company, there wasn't a massive influx of clients. So I could spend days where I may do one or zero clients. And I'd go home in the evening and there was no one there. So for weeks and weeks, having come from, I lavished the days where I would have a day to myself in Ireland, just with friendships and sports and going out clubbing. Whereas when I came here, that all stopped very quickly. In saying that, music is my absolute passion from when I've been a kid. And so I had been doing professional DJing in Ireland. So I started doing it here as well. And it was great. It was, again, getting in from the ground upwards. I'd go out and put pole posters up along the poles up and down Bondi on a Saturday night so that people on Sunday would see my name. I'd go out and put my neck out to try and get in, do free gigs in the city, and eventually built up where I had my own club night where I had Ministry of Sound play with me. I had Head Candy play. And once a month, I'd have my own club night. And DJing was, without a doubt, the greatest fun I've ever had in my life. I just loved it. Back in the day when you brought your records, I'd bring 250 records with me. And it's all about the energy of the crowd. It's about reading the crowd, not just the set playlist that you have. So it was, I think I'd said to you previously, my life is all about having an adventure and uplifting people along the way. That's not just a cliche. That's just kind of, I've realized, well, that was what I was doing in my music as well. It was like looking to see who was getting the most from the tune, and you would do more music like that rather than just having a set playlist. So it was a very personal thing for the individual crowd rather than just same thing each one. So anyway, yes, that was the music part of it, which kept me going, but I definitely wanted to open my own business. And so, yes, after 4 years, I built up a steady enough client base and was fortunate enough to open up my own business in the heart of Bondi Junction in 2007. And one of the fun key things I learned was why it's so important to have a niche, because when I opened up my business in 2007, there were 48 salons within a 500 square meter radius of my salon. So what is it that makes your business stand out from all the others? So mine was very much, we kept it niche. We kept a niche market of what we offered compared to a lot of other salons who had their areas of expertise where they would offer lots more. We kept it very niche. I had a wonderful crew who worked with me. And then, as you pointed out, unfortunately, the GFC happened overseas September 2008. It started kicking here at the end of 2009 when interest rates went up 4 times in 4 months. And so by June 2010, Australia was just being hammered and pummeled. All the incentives from the Rudd government then they'd spent all the money that they had to try and keep Australia going. And myself, like a lot of people, let go of all our staff. And I was fortunate enough to keep my business where a lot of people didn't get to keep theirs.
Absolutely. And I mean, obviously, congratulations on all the successes. I mean, it's not easy to crack into the market, like you said, even in Melbourne, even though the place is multicultural, whatever it is, so much happens, or you literally have to work twice as hard to get half of the sort of movement that you can get connecting with people. But what this all tells me is you would have started consulting or looking at human behavior way before you actually made this legit, because making people dance and making them enjoy the evening when you only have maybe 30 minutes to do that, that's a skill in and of itself.
Yeah. Look, I think I think the first book I ever read that blew my mind on how different we are as people. Now, don't judge me on this. This is the year 2000. It was a book called Men Are From Mars and Women Are From Venus. Depending on how old you are, you may remember it. And it was just, I remember reading it with my then girlfriend and just saying, going through bits and going, is that right? It's like, yeah. And it was just like, oh my God, that's what I do. And it was just, that was just a curious thing. I was never big on reading books. Music was always my thing. But just, I think that's as far back as I can go. It's just the interest in why we do things. Then Malcolm Gladwell has written a couple of books that are on, I would call sociology. And again, why people do things. He's an amazing book called Blink, and how the power of our mind is just in the power of a second, how we can make decisions. And then our rational brain catches up afterwards. And that was a huge, I think of one, that was probably one of the big ones for me. But also part of coming to Australia, emigrating as a 27-year-old, spending, like I said, an awful lot of time on my own as well, having left a beautiful home and family and friendships in Ireland. When you spend a lot of time by yourself, sometimes you get a lot of thoughts going on in your head. And through a very good friend, I heard of a psychotherapist. Never heard anything like that. I'd heard of therapy and counselors and psychologists. But the way it was explained to me was it was about exploring and understanding more about ourselves. And I was very fortunate. I found this woman in particular who just blew my mind, absolutely blew my mind, because I got to learn about why I reacted in certain ways to do things, why, even though logic can present itself in one way, why as humans, certainly for myself, why I would do it a certain way. And it all comes back to our childhood, how we were brought up, and so on and so forth. That's an oversimplification. However, the longer I spent doing time of pulling apart as to why I struggled with some things and where I did really well and how I could actually stop getting in my own way. And that one was really powerful. That there's so much, again, when I go back to the subconscious behaviors, our subconscious drivers, our negative biases, I got to see a pattern of my own works. And then naturally over time, just talking with clients, like you said, after the end of GFC, when it was myself and a client, it was no other staff, people would open up to me on things. And I would never tell people what they need to do, because that's not for me to do. That's all on their own previous experiences in life. But I just seemed to flow with questions as to what to ask them and get them to give me the answer, because they know the answer better than I do. I can't tell them what they need to do, whether in their work. And actually, two of the biggest stresses I found out for the overwhelming majority of people were relationships and work. Those were the biggest pressures that people seem to have. I had people, hand on heart, can't count the amount of times I had people in tears in my chair. And I thought it was I felt so privileged that I had the time and the money when I was single to go and explore and learn more about myself. And I realized I had some very beautiful feedback from clients when we went through journeys together. And I realized this is what I want to do. This is more what I want to do. And it's not an overnight thing. As you said, this is gradually over years of exploration. And, even with my own business, I had a business coach. And again, just challenged my thoughts on things and the biases that I've told myself over all the years. And the more I was open to really good guidance. And that's the thing. There are many coaches out there. There are many psychotherapists out there. Just because they have that name underneath doesn't mean that that's the person for you. You have to find, I was just very fortunate to find the right people for me.
Mm.
But I felt that there was so much I could help people with. And COVID was just, COVID, as you pointed out earlier with mental health, has just been, it opened up the door on how much people actually struggle. And, you know, when there's such a taboo with mental health, I mean, we're getting better as a society, but there's still that thing of, if you can't lose weight, you go and see a professional, you go and see a personal trainer at a gym. If you've got a bad back, you go and see a professional, you go and see a physiotherapist. If you find that you're struggling understanding some things, why you keep doing things a certain way and keep getting the same results, you go and see a professional. One of the things I found, which eventually got me into teaching psychotherapy within a workplace, was that when COVID happened, a lot of big companies turned around and said, you know, we value your health. We want to have mental health days. You can have yoga and Pilates, do live videos and all these Zoom conferences, and we care. And it was a big thing that big companies were promoting, we care. But when COVID seemed to plateau a little bit, probably about 2022, the overwhelming feedback I heard from clients where it's kind of like, for 2 years, they were doing all namaste. This is wonderful. And once it all settled, they went, you know what? We set our figures for 2025 back in 2020. You've had 2 years, it's been down. You've got 3 years now, and we got to hit those. You don't meet those targets, you're not getting your bonus. And people were just going, what happened to this mental health and support? It's just like, yeah, we can still have your yoga online if you want. But it's like, people rely heavily on those bonuses to put the kids through school, to pay for their homes, et cetera, et cetera. And as you would well know, living in Australia, it's not cheap. And so people were just, and the effects on the body is incredible. The effects of cortisol in our body is a whole chapter within itself, which I won't go into now. It's ridiculous, the effects it has on people. So in my research, I've been looking at going, okay, if I want to help psychological safety in the workplace, I'm going to bring it right back to understanding the very basics of what I learned. Start with page one and just get curious about it. And that's how I bring it about into workplaces.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I love how you made this transition, because, you know, just coming from hairdressing to human behavior consulting is really, really fascinating in and of itself, right? But let's just take it back to hairdressing one more time, because for me, my understanding is, obviously I do my own hair and stuff, but you know, when somebody's sitting, usually not a lot of people understand this, but when somebody's sitting while getting their hair done or whatnot, they're looking at themselves in the mirror and they're seeing themselves. Yes, you might be a conduit to another human that might be listening or whatever it is, but that is them seeing themselves. And for most people, you're transforming them from what they thought they looked like when they came into something else that was just them. It just needed unveiling. Now, is that a correct observation, that when people see themselves, they really sort of like open up and they want to be truthful to themselves, and eventually they start telling hairdressers all their secrets because they feel like they're just wanting to connect with themselves a lot more?
I think you're on the right page there. What I find is it can be a very vulnerable position, because generally what happens is you don't see yourself with your nice shirt and all that. A gown is put over you, so it's now just a blank canvas. The next thing that happens is, pardon me, when you're sitting there in front of a mirror, it could be like a computer screen, but it's not your home mirror. You're now in someone else's space. You're now, when someone's cutting your hair's been parted one way or another. You normally never have a center party, but the hairdresser needs to have it in a center parting. It's like, I don't feel I'm looking my best. This is not my clothes. It can be quite a vulnerable place, especially for women when they're getting color put on their hair. And when the color's put on, they've got either lots of foil sticking out or the color's stuck to their face. And it's a place where people either, and I think that's why we used to have magazines in the salon. Yeah, people enjoyed just tuning out and looking at gossip for a while. But it meant, to your point, that you're not looking at yourself in the mirror the whole time. You could look down and focus on someone else and then just comment on them and who's divorcing, who's getting married, et cetera, et cetera. You didn't have to focus on who the person is right in front of the mirror. When when there's a trust that has been built, that's when the vulnerability is allowed, where the magazine's put down and a person feels more open. I've worked with many hairdressers over the years who can be very talented hairdressers, but they're not great communicators. And so sometimes I would see clients even just sitting with their eyes closed while the hair was done. It was too, again, vulnerable is the word that I would use. And unless you can have a trust harmonious area for them to open up a little bit more, it can be either nowadays there's no more magazines in the majority of salons, people just sit on their phones instead.
Absolutely. Now, with all of this, it did start influencing, your understanding of human behavior. Now, could you maybe define, in your own understanding, psychological safety and why this is now crucial in the workplace? Because so many people, like you said, when 2000 happened, everybody, was singing Kumbaya, and pretty much after that, nobody really cared, and those that were deemed non-essential became a label of the kind of work that they were doing.
Yeah. So what, define psychological safety in the workplace?
Absolutely. Why is it crucial? Yeah.
It is so crucial because we have realized that the old school way of, quite simply, the carrot and the stick just does not work. By telling people to work harder does not make people work harder. In fact, it shuts them down a little bit. And part of what I explain in this is we have, in our sympathetic nervous system, we have a fighter. Everyone's heard of fight or flight. Fight or flight is the reaction, and you cannot control this reaction within your body when it happens. And a typical one in the workplace or in any environment, we'll stick to work for now, is when someone blames. We're going to say, you screwed up on X, Y, and Z. It didn't come across properly. What are you going to do about it? And even worse comments can be made as well. Our brains interpret blame as a physical attack. And so what happens when our brains interpret that is we go into fight or flight mode. When that happens, the blood rushes from the frontal lobe of our brain to the biggest organs in our body, or the biggest muscles, I should say. So you're getting ready to either flee or to fight. When that happens, the logical part of your brain is not actually listening to everything that's being said. You're ready to either, react or to flee. So the person who's blaming, their message isn't actually getting across. The person who's listened to it, I say, is wanting to react in a different way. So studies have been done on this endlessly. Google's Project Aristotle back in 2013 studied all the best companies. I think it was about 184 companies who were all thriving. And they came out with, I think, roughly 4 or 5 top things that people do in a work environment. But the overriding 100% of the time that got top businesses working was psychological safety. So what that is, say, for example, I'll use the example of blame. When something has happened within a company, you are looking to see where did the process break down along the way. And I've given it a simple analogy of, if anyone's ever seen any of David Attenborough's wonderful works, and you see ant colonies, and they are putting together the colony in this building. When one part of the soil collapses, what they don't do is stand there and go, oh yeah, that's Bob's area there. Bob's going to make it work himself. They all run over, because for the greater good of the colony to survive, we need to get that tunnel built up a little bit further again. So when something happens within a company, for the greater good of the company, everyone wants to pull in together to get that working. Once we figured out, okay, we've got that working, then we want to see, okay, why did it break down? So where did the process break down? So when something has not worked efficiently in the company, is it just because Bob is inefficient? Is it because he hasn't had the right training? Is it because Bob's got a lot going on at home at the moment that we actually don't know about? Bob's not going to tell us any of that. Bob's not going to tell us that he needs more training. He doesn't have the money to get his glasses checked. He's got problems at home with grandparents now moved in. Unless he feels in a safe environment to do so. It doesn't mean that we then fix it for him, but we need Bob to feel safe enough and vulnerable enough that he can approach us and go, you know what? I made a mistake on X. I think this is where I came. And that's part of the idea. You've got to come up with some sort of suggestion yourself. Psychological safety does not mean that you go, I made a mistake, it's now your problem. It means that you come to try and understand where did it break down and how are we going to try and stop that from happening again. For Bob to feel that way, leaders got to be in that same position too. And it all starts, and I explain this time after time, it all starts at the top. The CEOs have to be willing enough to hire empathetic leaders, people who understand that I can be vulnerable to my crew. So if I come in on a Monday morning and I want to lead my team and I'm going to have my meeting with everyone this morning, if I haven't slept because my kid wet the bed at 4:00 in the morning and, you know, everyone's been there. And I'm just, you know what? I'm so sorry. I just don't have it in me this morning on this meeting. I'm going to go through this. I'm not making excuses. I've been up since 4:00, but we're going to hammer through this. But I just need you to know where I'm at. Okay. I've got my double espresso. Let's hit the ground. It's not showing up to say I'm perfect, because people can actually see through that. The body language that we emit is unbelievable, how the words that come out don't always match our faces and our expressions. So people can be saying, oh yeah, it's been wonderful. Yeah, I'm getting through. We're pulling it from the head tilt to the scrunching of the nose to the it gives away everything. Going, no, everything isn't right. When everything's right, people are more upfront. Their hands are open. Their eyes are dilated. You cannot fake that. You might fake it for a second or two, but people can read straight through it. So when you've got unauthentic leaders who don't know how to be vulnerable in a situation, they cannot expect their team to suddenly be vulnerable and safe and come to them. So the training all starts from the top, and it's just education about it first. Going, it's really important that we are vulnerable. And, you know, there's a fine line with the vulnerability and oversharing. You know, you don't want to say, been up since 4:00 in the morning and then give more details that are quite unnecessary to that story. Be vulnerable, keep it clean, move on. Mm. When people feel that they are in a safe environment to make mistakes, that's where the real magic happens. That's where innovation happens. That's where collaboration happens. That's where performance. They have found this overriding. There was Amy Edmondson, who has coined the most recent phrase that we were aware of for psychological safety back in the 90s. She did an experiment in hospitals all across the US as to who were the top performing hospitals across the US. And what she found was the top performing hospitals, one in particular, top performing hospital presented the biggest amount of mistakes compared to all the other hospitals in the US. And her team were dumbfounded, going, well, how can the hospital that's making the most mistakes be the successful hospital in all of the US? And the thing was, it wasn't that they made the most mistakes, they reported the most mistakes. And that was the key difference. So many other hospitals, they don't want to say, we left a scalpel inside this person. They don't want to quit. And that's the other thing. When you've got a senior doctor, and you put this in any business, a senior person in the company is saying something, and maybe a junior doctor or junior nurse goes, I don't think that's right. I think they've made a mistake. They need to be able to put their hand up and go, I think I disagree with that opinion respectfully. I feel that, and they present their evidence forward. Because it's not saying you're wrong. It's saying, I think the idea that's being brought forward is incorrect. Can I bring my evidence to support where I'm coming from? Mm-hmm. And there's a real difference. And this is getting a message across with just the finest changes to the words that you're using. You're wrong versus the idea that's been presented. I feel in my expertise or in my experience, I feel that if we did this with this, the outcome could be this. It allows for collaboration. It allows for open discussion. This is how you get to the most peak performance and productive companies out there. And like I say, that the evidence now is just overwhelming. It's when you have psychological safety in the workplace, like there's 56% less absenteeism because people feel that they have a place to work and they feel fulfilled. They feel that there's a trust there. Less people leave the company. More people want to engage when they are there. Like the stats are just, I'm not going to bore you with it. The stats are overwhelming as to why it's so important to have it. The part that I do is I educate leaders as to, well, here's how you get it into the company in the first place. But not only here's how you get it into the company, here's why it's so beneficial to each and every person. And at the end of it, every organization wants to go, sure, everyone's going to feel great. but what's in it for me? And I say, well, what's in it for you is, but depending on which stat you want to look at, it's 37 to 64% increase in profits over 5 years. It's just, if you want to take it from a monetary perspective, sure, you're going to do incredibly well. But the place that you're going to have, the environment with your organization, it's just going to be attracting the right people, and people don't leave, or the reduction in people leaving is massive. So in a nutshell, I'm not sure if that was in a nutshell, but yes, that's kind of.
Well, that was the whole set right there, and absolutely. But you see, you bring about so many different aspects that people never take into consideration. And while you were talking, I was actually just thinking, you know how Zoom became the modus of communication during the pandemic and everything else, and for some people, the kitchen table became a restaurant, became a school, became a boardroom,
Yes,
and became a laundry table where everything was being sorted out. So when people just curate the view they want you to see, you never know who else is around them. And when you start maybe confronting them about certain things, they might look at who they are in respect to the people that are around them, and also in respect to you, and you might not get those true answers. Now, what sort of strategies do you recommend for organizations to really support employee mental health? Because when they're in their own environment, that's their domain, and it's very difficult for you to try and maybe tell somebody who in front of them is probably their kids, and they want to appear as if they're strong characters to their kids, whereas that's not the actual place we want them to be, during that conversation.
Look, that's a whole. After my previous dialogue, I'm going to try and narrow this down a bit. This is where it comes down to individual people. It's important to be vulnerable in front of your kids too. And again, there's a certain part where we don't overshare. I've said I'm sorry to my kids from as early as I can remember when I've made a mistake, to go, I'm not perfect. I am the person in charge. I am your leader, but I also make mistakes. My kids have seen me cry when the last time we left my family, and my brother lives in Boston, and the Irish family come over. Everyone was together. This was last year. And when we left, I was a mess, and my kids saw me, and I was like, guys, it's okay. Like, they see, like, I'm 6'3", I'm a Muay Thai fighter, I run businesses, I do showcasing, but it's like, it's important that you also see who I am as a human being. So that's it's hard if you are doing a Zoom meeting and you've got kids behind you. I just couldn't do it because, like I said, it's like two border collies who are just running around. It'd be insane. I generally just have to put the TV on for them, which I hate. Different story. So that's the first part. If you can be vulnerable in front of your kids, you'll learn how to be vulnerable with yourself to begin with, and so on, build from there. How do we do it in the workplace, especially if it's over Zoom? And this is why it's so important to hire leaders who understand EQ. I mean, EQ now far surpasses IQ. Like, the top 1% of the top 1% have the highest EQ over IQ. They understand that again, the word soft skills, it's so important. The soft skills just unfortunately makes it feel a bit lame, but it's actually so incredibly important. And the top companies out there get this. The smaller companies, some of the companies I've worked with which have been more family owned and run for so many, 20, 30, 40 years, it's really hard for them to break through that part, because unless they've had some sort of corporate background or experience, they don't see it in big workplaces. Pardon me. So how do we get empathetic leaders? Again, it starts with the CEO, knowing what it's like to look for that vulnerability, and knowing for a leader when they're having a conversation with people that it doesn't mean we don't want the most from our employees. It doesn't mean that we can't pull people up. And that's the other part. There's been a misconception sometimes with implementing psychological safety in the workplace that you can't tell people off. You cannot have uncomfortable conversations. And it's actually the complete opposite. It's about being safe to have uncomfortable situations and uncomfortable conversations going, look, the reality is this month you haven't been hitting your targets. I've gone through this with you for X amount of time. I'd like to know, is there some support that I can give you moving forward? But I need you to let me know, because if you don't connect with me, I can't help you. So is there something that you want to have a chat with me about today? And it's letting people know they're in that safe space. And if you are the empathetic leader who understands, I say, who can show that vulnerability about themselves, but also build that trust. There's a lot of conversations I've had with so many different people within individual companies. And the reason why people open up to me is they know that once they say off the record, it's off the record. It's absolutely off the record. When they can tell me stuff that they want to talk about, that's what we do. And once you start on it, I know I'm oversimplifying this, but again, this is a short amount of time we have. Hiring empathetic leaders who know how to build who know how to build trust, who know how to look for vulnerability and to express their own, is how you will get the best from individuals, and support. Another thing an awful lot of good companies do is that they also have they will have some sort of psychologist that they use, or they will go to, or they'll have a counseling background, so that when it gets to a point where a leader goes, look, this is now past my skill set, I'm going to raise a flag on this. If you're okay, I'd like to get you support. Depending on the size of the company, some have access to funds for it. I think every company should have that, where they have that fallback where there's only so much the leader can help them with, because the leader, of course, is trying to get the best for them, but he or she is trying to get the best for them too, and from them. And there's a certain point where it's like, okay, if it's got that far now, we need to hand you over to a professional, and the company will provide that for you. That's the quickest way I can sum up that answer for you.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for that. Now, for those that are watching right now and they are thinking, you know what, maybe I need to find out what EBC can do for me. What would be the best way that people can maybe start that journey, or where can they go on the internet to connect with you?
So if you look up my name, which is Evin Brannigan, EVIN, Brannigan, BRANNIGAN.au, evinbrannigan.au. And that's where you'll find my website. That's where you'll find out pretty much everything that I do. You'll see some of the recent talks that I've had. You'll see the keynote speaks that I do. You'll see my phone numbers on there, my email, and that's how you get in touch with me.
Absolutely. And obviously, I'll make sure that all those links are in the show notes below, so that we can get started on that journey. Now, part of the reason why you do this is because of your why. And we've really established that most of this hasn't been about money. It hasn't been about, whatever wealth you might, garner from this. But what I'm sensing here is it's about connection. It's about really being curious about the other individual and things like that. And one of the things that you experienced while you were starting off in Sydney was a bit of loneliness. Are you still lonely even?
No, it was a great. I keep a very small circle. I probably have about 4. I better include 5 because that's my wife. 5 incredibly close people who I can be the funniest guy in the world. I can be the most vulnerable person. From these 5 people, there's nothing that I hide. Absolutely nothing. So I don't have a large network of people like I used to, but nor do I need it. And what I mean by that is, it was great when I was 20 something and there was 30, 40 friends. We're always going out and partying, and that. Having these 5 closest people to me it's all I need, because then I get the fulfillment in what I do with people. It's funny. I'm glad actually you mentioned social connection is so vital. It's so imperative. And I'll try and keep this quick. Anyone who wants to look it up, it's called polyvagal theory. Polyvagal theory is poly is many, and it's all about the vagus nerves in our body. It's all in the brain. It goes through our automatic nervous system, parasympathetic nervous system. The nerves go from behind the brain right down to the front. Though I'm going to just talk about the ones at the front for the moment. They go right through your pharynx, your larynx, your heart, your lungs, right into your gut. This is where you've heard of gut instinct and gut intuition. It's all based on past experiences, past memories, trauma that we've experienced. But one of the biggest things is social connection. And social connection is there from the moment you're born. It's why it's so important, that connection between a caregiver, a mother, a father with their child, because the connections haven't sort of fused in the brain quite yet. So that's why they cry, they're so needy. It's humans, we're the only one that come out that we cannot survive on our own. But that goes on throughout the older we get too. Social connection is so vitally important that it can create illness when we don't have it. It's that it's so important that people who get in accidents, who are in, say, for example, a car crash, the overwhelming majority of people, if they have someone there to soothe them, to take care of them in that moment, the overwhelming majority of them do not suffer from PTSD from these situations. Social connection, that real, genuine connection that you have with people, which is why I say I couldn't be happy with the 5 that I've got. It has visceral and physical reactions to our bodies. How it reacts in our cortisol. The biggest organ on your body is skin. It affects sleep. It is huge. It is absolutely vital. So, look, anyone who wants to look it up, polyvagal theory, and goes into social connection, and then it'll just go off from there. It's phenomenal. It's absolutely phenomenal. And you don't need to spend hours on it. There's one lady, Irene, come back to me, on Irene YouTube, and she does the biggest one on it. And then from there, you can explore it if you want, or just take those simple bits out of it.
Absolutely. And thank you so much. Well, now that you've brought us into your world, Evin, what's next? What's next for EBC, and what can we be excited about in the future that you're working on?
Do you know what? I just love this journey. I don't know where I'm going. I've never known what the next journey was. And even when I sold my hairdressing business, which was doing great, but it was just time. It was just time to move on. And when, 4 months after I sold the business and I wanted to launch this other business, COVID kicked in. I didn't know what I was going to do. And thank goodness I still had clients, over the 2 years want to come back and still see me. So I look after them a couple of days a week. And starting from scratch and building this business from scratch, it has been, I still have all the rejection emails I got from people who I wanted to go out, and I've kept them all as nearly like a driver for me, going, okay, don't let it get you down. I mean, don't get me wrong. It was 2.5 years of no's and no responses, but I knew I was onto something good. And once I got that first hook and the changes I've seen in people and the feedback I've got from people, it just drives me. It just keeps driving me. And so what am I going to keep doing? Look, I'd love to take this on the bigger scale I could do this of. Just when it got down to the salon with individual people, I honestly feel so lucky that I had the chance to do it when I was single, no commitments, no one else to rely on me. I invested in myself. It was the best investment I ever did. And from there, I've been gradually, now I just research. I'm not a therapist by any means. I don't claim to be. I don't have all the answers. I find human behavior so incredibly rewarding, fulfilling, outlandish. It's crazy. But once people can understand themselves a little bit better, they're going to get better results from themselves. I look forward to doing TED Talks and having them out there. But, look, if I don't get a TED Talk, that's not my thing. That's not the be all and end all. It's areas like this. I don't know how many people this might reach, but if you get a handful of people who just say, it's time I put my hand up, it's time I just want to explore things a little bit further, whatever way you want to take it, everybody can be a better version of themselves. And I don't want to make that sound like a goddamn cliche, pardon me. But seriously, the freedom you get from being vulnerable is phenomenal. So whatever market I can take that to, whatever audience I can take that to, wonderful. The bigger, the better. And if it means that I just go around Australia and keep doing what I'm doing, that's what I'll keep doing. If I can take it global, or I say someone overseas will see it and they just tell their people and they go off and explore it over there. It's a gift that keeps on giving. It truly is. So what's next for me? I'm just going to keep doing whatever it is that I'm doing.
Absolutely. And I'm glad you stopped by on your journey to awesomeness. You stopped by the Online Prosperity Show there, Evin. Now, I can't thank you enough for the time and the scale of, information and insights that you just dropped with us here today. I mean, your life story and your experience have so much to give to those that are still searching, whether it's for their own personal business endeavors. And I think if people would want to learn more about Evin's work, just visit his website at ebc.agency or connect with him on LinkedIn. And I'll make sure that all those links are in the show notes below. I can't thank you enough, Evin.
I can thank you too, Prosper. Honestly, it's so great to have a platform here. I have also, it was my bad. I did send you a link for ebc.agency, and I've now stepped it up. I've now moved it on. So if we can do the link to the website I mentioned earlier, I'll leave that with you. ebc.agency, it's lovely, but it's now been put to bed. This one's beautiful. Yeah, I got to see the new website.
Absolutely, not a problem. I will add that link to the show notes as and when we receive it. And for those that are watching right now, thank you so much too for being a part of this. I'd love to hear your thoughts on today's episode. Okay, maybe you've experienced a significant shift in your career, or something that has maybe changed you for the best. And just let us know how it has impacted your life. When you share your stories in the comments below, Evin will also be able to see them and maybe invite you to some of his adventures and help you do and have a happier existence. And for those that are interested in learning more on what's next, in our next episode, we're going to be discussing ideas that will help you lead a happier and more fulfilling life. So be sure to subscribe to the Online Prosperity Show for more insightful conversations. I think today's conversation was very inspiring. And if you were inspired by Evin's journey, just consider how you can foster psychological safety in your own workplace. The small steps that we take today can actually lead to significant change. So thank you so much for joining the Online Prosperity Show. Until next time, stay prosperous. Bye for now.